Hey Reddit, I'm in a bit of a rough patch right now and honestly, I could really use a little encouragement and maybe some straight-up advice to help me shake this off and get back on my feet. So let me lay it all out for you. For as far back as I can remember, yeah, all 29 years of my life, it's been painfully obvious that my older brother, Zane, has always been the golden boy in our family. He's only a year ahead of me in age, but he might as well have been on a pedestal from day one. It felt like the universe, or at least our household, always tilted in his favor. And Zane knew it, too. He wore that favoritism like a crown, acting like he was better than everyone else, especially me. No matter what he did, he could do no wrong in our parents' eyes. Meanwhile, I was always the one catching the blame. My folks had a serious soft spot for Zane. He ended up with the nicest stuff, the most attention, you name it. The only people who ever dared point out the unfairness were our grandparents or the occasional blunt relative. And instead of facing the criticism and doing something about it, my parents came up with their own solution. They packed us up and moved us 150 miles away from the rest of the family. Their thinking was pretty straightforward. If we only saw our extended family on holidays, they wouldn't have to deal with anyone pointing out their clear favoritism. Back at home, things were even worse. Zane wasn't just bratty, he was outright mean to me. He'd get physical, and my parents wouldn't lift a finger. Dad just brushed it off with that old boys will be boys excuse and told me to toughen up. But that wasn't the end of it. When I finally landed a girlfriend, Zane couldn't help himself. He started flirting with her constantly, to the point where she felt so uncomfortable, she broke things off with me. I was furious. I mean, who wouldn't be? I confronted Zane, then turned to my parents for some backup. But all they did was laugh like it was some harmless sibling drama and told me I was being immature. I felt completely abandoned. Then came the family trips. Time after time, I was the one left behind. They always had some excuse, couldn't afford another plane ticket, or they'd take me next time. But next time never came. Spending time with my grandparents ended up being the highlight of my childhood. I truly loved being around them. But Zane? He just kept getting everything he asked for. No matter the price tag, it always seemed to appear like magic. Then I turned 16 and finally got my driver's license, a big moment, especially since Zane, despite being older, couldn't pass his test no matter how many times he tried. It was like the universe finally gave me a win. I was flipping burgers at McDonald's, scraping together whatever I could from each paycheck. I figured it wouldn't hurt to ask my parents if they could help me buy a used car. I even told them I'd pay them back, just needed a little loan to get started. But they shot me down flat. I was crushed. Then, right when Zane finally passed his driving test after who knows how many tries, my parents turned around and bought him a car on the spot, just like that. I couldn't believe it. I tried to bring it up, thinking they might see how unfair it was, but all I got was, your brother needs it more. Seriously? When I turned 18, after a ton of pleading, they finally agreed to get me a car. But Zane swooped in again. Suddenly, his car, perfectly fine, wasn't good enough anymore. So my parents gave me his hand-me-down and went out and bought him a brand new one. Yeah, it stung. But I told myself, at least I've got a car now, even though it felt like I was just Zane's understudy, always getting the leftovers. The only time my parents acted like they treated me and Zane equally was when other family members were watching. Birthdays, holidays, they'd put on a show, pretending like we were both golden children. It was actually kind of funny in a sad way. You could almost see them trying not to slip up in front of the nosy relatives, the kind who live for drama and can't resist sticking their noses in everyone's business. My parents played favorites, no doubt, but they didn't want the world to know. They warned me all the time to keep my mouth shut about what went on at home. I was even threatened with losing all my gadgets if I spilled any family secrets. No pressure, right? When Zane graduated high school, you'd think he'd cured cancer or something. My parents were overjoyed, nonstop praise, big party, tons of guests, the works. But when it was my turn to graduate, my mom didn't even bother showing up on time, even though she was home doing nothing. My dad? He didn't show up at all. That night, sitting at dinner, I felt completely invisible. I brought it up, but all they said was, it's just high school. Not a big deal. And just when I thought I couldn't feel any lower, Zane, off doing his college thing, texted me something cruel. He basically said I'd never measure up to him, and that it should be obvious by now our parents didn't really care about me. That night, I broke down. I cried myself to sleep, realizing no matter what I did, I'd never be enough for them. That was the turning point. I made up my mind. I had to get out. And you'd think maybe my leaving would make them sad, or at least get some kind of emotional response. But nope, it was like they were relieved. One less expense, one less problem. I became just another face they'd see on the holidays. I started grinding, picked up a full-time job, got into college on scholarships, and made it work with zero help from my parents. Not a single cent came from them. It was tough, but it forced me to learn how to stand on my own and stop chasing their approval. Fast forward a bit, I graduate college. Huge moment, right? But again, no one from my family came. The excuse? Too far to drive. I didn't even care anymore. Luckily, I landed an amazing job right back in my hometown. It paid really well, and for once, life was treating me right. Zane, on the other hand, had a rougher go. He dropped out of college because of drinking issues and pivoted to day trading, using money our parents gave him every month. For a while, he bragged about how well he was doing, until it all came crashing down in one bad trade. You'd think that would be a wake-up call for our parents. But instead, they called it a learning experience and told him to try getting a more stable job. Zane jumped from gig to gig until he finally found something steady, but it didn't pay nearly as much as my job. We don't talk much, but when we do run into each other, usually at Christmas, he acts like he's got it all figured out. Tries to make it seem like his choices were smarter, even though they clearly weren't. Still, I don't let it get to me. My bank account speaks for itself. Now let's talk about my dad's business, a small manufacturing company he built from scratch. About 5 years ago, things took a turn. His manager left for a better offer, and my dad, getting older, was struggling to keep the place running on his own. He didn't want to bring in a stranger and spend months training them, only for them to leave. So, in a rare move, he called a lunch meeting with me and Zane. That never happened, so I knew something was up. He cut straight to the chase. The business was in trouble. No manager, no help, and bankruptcy was looking more and more likely. You could see it in his face. He was desperate. I stayed quiet, even though I wanted to jump in. It felt like he was really hoping Zane would step up. But Zane shot him down cold. Laughed it off. Said it wasn't worth his time. My dad was crushed. I'd never seen him look so defeated. I was stunned. I always thought Zane would be the one to carry the business forward. He was the chosen one, after all. But now, my dad turned to me, practically begging. He said he couldn't keep the doors open without help. And you know what? I had the money. I'd saved up a good chunk, and I could afford to help. Even after everything, part of me couldn't just watch the business go under. So I said yes. I threw in my savings, jumped in headfirst, and decided to rebuild it from the ground up. And my parents? They were unbelievably grateful. Couldn't stop thanking me. 5 years later, I've been running full throttle. I've built relationships with our clients, modernized our whole online presence, even got us selling globally. I overhauled the paperwork and got us in line with ISO standards. I was everywhere, packing boxes, sweeping floors, lending a hand wherever I could. Meanwhile, my dad barely showed up. Technology isn't his thing. He'd only come by when something big was happening. But the business? It started booming. All because I gave it everything I had. My parents started seeing me in a whole new light. I felt like, for the first time, I was being seen as a capable son, not just the backup option. And I wasn't bitter. If Zane ever wanted in, I was open to sharing. Things were actually good between me and my parents for once. The favoritism faded, and I felt respected. Even my grandparents were proud of me. It finally felt like I mattered. Then, 3 years ago, Zane hit us with a bombshell. He was getting married. None of us even knew he was dating anyone seriously. He'd only met this woman, Donna, a month earlier, and suddenly they were planning a wedding. I raised a few concerns. Maybe they were moving too fast. Maybe they didn't know each other well enough. But Zane didn't want to hear it. He told me to back off and stop acting like I was better just because I made more money. After that talk with Zane, I made a decision. I was done meddling in his personal life. I figured if he wanted to make reckless choices, he could deal with the fallout himself. But after he married Donna, things took a sharp turn. Donna didn't really vibe with our parents. She thought they were way too involved in Zane's life and constantly overstepped. So little by little, she started cutting them off, ignoring their texts, not picking up their calls. It hit my mom especially hard. She'd always been real close with Zane, and suddenly not hearing from him tore her up inside. Then Zane pulled a full-on vanishing act. For nearly 2 years, nobody knew where he was. He just ghosted the whole family. It was like he dropped off the map completely. Then out of nowhere, last year, He just showed up at the house like it was no big deal. I didn't even know he was back until something odd happened with my dad. He was supposed to attend this really important meeting, but he never showed. I got worried and called him to see what was going on. That's when he hit me with the news. Zane was back, and he wasn't just visiting. He was moving back in for good. I was floored. I mean, I had no idea he'd even been in touch, let alone planning a comeback. A few days later, my dad said he wanted to have a family dinner. He had something big to announce. And that's when the whole picture came into focus. Zane's wife had cheated on him and left him for another guy. Honestly, I wasn't that shocked. Donna always made more money than he did, and Zane's never been great at holding down a job. My parents, though, they were thrilled to have Zane back in the fold, especially now that he was getting a divorce. But things didn't just stop there. Later that same night, my dad pulled me and Zane into his office, shut the door, and gave me a look I'll never forget. He stared me dead in the eyes and told me something that made my stomach drop. He said I should start looking for a new job because they wouldn't be needing me anymore. I just sat there in shock, waiting for someone to say it was a bad joke. But Zane chimed in, grinning like a cat who caught a mouse, saying he was ready to take over the family business. My dad gave him a nod of approval. This was no prank. He was serious. My dad basically told me Zane was back and taking over my role, just like that. I couldn't wrap my head around it. I'd left my own job to help save this business, threw in all my savings, gave it everything I had. And now they were kicking me out like I was just some temp. I looked right at my dad and asked the obvious, why can't both of us work here? This is a family business. I'm the one who helped it grow. But Zane just laughed like the whole thing was cute, like I'd just been holding his spot for him this whole time. He told me to stop whining and grow up. I didn't let it slide. I reminded my dad of all the blood, sweat, and tears I poured into keeping the business afloat, turning things around when it was circling the drain. But he didn't care. He told me flat out, I was just an employee, and he had every right to let me go. Said he was doing me a favor by not making me serve a notice period. He wanted me gone immediately. Desperate for some sense of fairness, I asked if Mom knew about this. Maybe she could talk some sense into him. But he nodded. This had been her idea too. They both agreed it was the only way to keep Zane around long term. My heart just crumbled right there. It felt like I'd been used, picked up when they needed me, then tossed aside like yesterday's news. So I sat down with my dad again and told him, calmly, that I needed my investment back. I was ready to move on and start something new. But man, that triggered them. Zane lost it. How dare I ask Dad for money? He brought up all the money they'd spent on me growing up, as if that canceled everything out. My dad backed him up, saying I chose to invest, and I should be ashamed for even asking. Zane called me ungrateful, and that was the last straw. I snapped. I told them straight. I was tired of always coming second, tired of being treated like the spare, while Zane got the royal treatment. I reminded them of everything I'd done to keep the business alive, and now they were punishing me for wanting my own money back? My dad went off, furious that I raised my voice at his golden boy. He said I didn't deserve a dime, and that I was out of the will, calling me greedy. Then he told me to get out of the house. Those words hit like a punch to the gut. For the first time in a long time, I felt completely broken. All my hopes of running the family business, of finally earning my place, it all went up in smoke. Dad was furious, and when he said I wasn't getting a cent or any part of the legacy I'd helped build, it felt like betrayal of the worst kind. I swallowed the hurt and told him, fine, keep it. I'll start from nothing and build something even better. One day, you'll see how wrong you were about me. And with that, I left. I didn't wait for another word. No texts. No calls. Nothing. A while later, my grandparents heard what went down, how Zane had come back and taken everything, and how I'd been pushed out. They were livid with my parents. But by then, the damage had already been done. 6 months passed. I cut off all contact with my family. It was lonely, sure, but I was determined to figure things out on my own. Starting over was hard, especially knowing the people who should have supported me were the first to shut the door in my face. I had no experience outside the business, really. But then it hit me. I could flip the script. I started reaching out to our former competitors, telling them about my role in running and growing our family firm. I figured if I couldn't have the legacy, I'd use what I knew to build something new, and maybe get a little poetic justice in the process. To my surprise, a few companies were actually interested. I landed some interviews, which felt like walking into a battlefield, but a good one this time. Eventually, one company made me an offer I couldn't refuse. I was thrilled. It felt like the beginning of a brand new chapter. The job was no cakewalk, though. It pushed me hard, but I came at it with the same fire I had when I was trying to save the family business. Slowly but surely, I started putting my life back together. Bit by bit, I rebuilt my confidence. Without the negativity from my parents dragging me down, I actually started feeling good about myself. I was stable. I was happy. It was like the universe had finally given me a fresh start to prove what I could do without anyone holding me back. But just when things were going great, out of the blue, bam, my parents popped back into my life. It all started last week. They blew up my phone with texts and calls. At first, I ignored them, figured they'd stop. But they didn't. They just kept coming. Curiosity got the better of me, so I picked up. Their voices were filled with panic. No pleasantries, no apologies. Just straight up begging me to help pay their bills because their electricity had been shut off. I was stunned. Not even a "how are you?" Just, "can you send money?" I stayed calm and told them maybe they should call their successful son for help instead. I told them not to bother me again. That's when my mom broke down crying and the truth came out. The family business? Teetering on the edge. They were almost bankrupt. Turns out, they had lost everything, every penny of their savings, thanks to my brilliant brother. He convinced them to pour it all into crypto and day trading early this year, thinking they'd triple their money. Then the market tanked, and with it, their entire future. On top of that, Zane was running the business into the ground. He couldn't manage the employees, lost major clients, and had no idea what he was doing. When I heard all this, I couldn't help but feel this strange mix of sadness and irony. After everything they'd done, kicking me out, calling me greedy, they were back, hat in hand, asking for help. I reminded them of how they treated me, how they never repaid the money I invested. I reminded them I was the one who pulled that business out of the mud, not Zane. And they tossed me aside anyway. I took a breath and laid it all out. I hadn't forgotten the years of favoritism, of being overlooked. And now, after they lost everything, they expected me to swoop in and save the day? They tried guilt-tripping me, saying I owed them for raising me, that I should be a better son. But I stood firm. I told them I gave them everything I had, and they turned their backs on me. Now they had to live with the choices they made. So I had to have a serious, no-nonsense conversation with my parents. I told them straight, if they tried to reach out to me one more time asking for help, I wasn't just going to ignore it, I'd take real action. I let them know I'd start demanding every last cent I ever put into their business. And if it came to that, I wouldn't hesitate to take legal steps, even if it meant forcing them to sell their house to settle the debt. As you might expect, that didn't go over well. They were furious. Things escalated quickly, and we ended up in a shouting match. But no matter how much guilt they tried to throw at me, or how loudly they yelled, I didn't back down. I stood my ground. After everything they put me through, I wasn't about to fold just because they suddenly needed something. Standing up for myself like that, it was a huge moment for me. For the first time in a long time, I felt strong. It was kind of surreal, honestly. After years of being pushed to the side and treated like I didn't matter, they still thought I'd come running the second they called. But when I ended that call, I knew I'd done the right thing. And of course, that was just the beginning. My phone blew up, texts, calls from not just my parents, but Zane and a few other relatives too. Suddenly, I was the bad guy. They all said I was being too harsh, that I should just forgive and forget, help my parents out, let the past go. But not everyone was against me. My grandparents, they had my back, like always. They've seen the truth for a long time. When I was a kid, I spent more time with them than with my own parents. Mom and Dad were always too busy, too distracted. My grandparents were the ones who really saw how I was treated, how I was left behind, how the favoritism played out day after day. So yeah, it's been a wild ride. And now? Now I'm the villain in everyone else's story because I won't sweep years of pain under the rug. But let me ask you, am I really the bad guy here for finally protecting my peace? Hey everyone, can you believe it's been 3 months already since my last update? Time really flies. And this time, I've got some genuinely good news to share. Remember that email I sent out? I didn't know what to expect, but something amazing happened. A bunch of relatives actually reached out. They apologized. They told me they had no idea how badly things had gone for me, and that they were sorry for not seeing it sooner. Some of them even confronted my parents. I don't know the exact details of what went down, but I can tell you this. My parents weren't happy about it. My uncle, my dad's brother, even messaged me multiple times calling me childish and selfish for airing our dirty laundry. And that was it for me. I sent him one final reply, laid everything out, and made it clear I was done. I told him I wouldn't lose a wink of sleep if my parents ended up without a roof over their heads. I warned him that if they or anyone else tried to contact me again, I wouldn't hesitate to take legal action. Then I blocked him. And since then, silence. Beautiful, peaceful silence. On the bright side, life outside all that drama has been good. Work is going great. I'm feeling solid, grounded. And the best part? I've started going to therapy. It's been a game changer, helping me process all that old hurt, all the years of feeling like I was never enough. For the first time in a long time, I feel like I'm really moving forward, rebuilding my life, piece by piece, and finally, healing. And to everyone who's followed my journey here, thank you. Seriously, you've helped me more than you know. Just being able to share this and be heard, it's meant everything.